I want to welcome everybody to our podcast here. And if you are joining us, it is your host, Isaac. And then we have our guest here with us today, Mr. Kofi Afari Dodi. Kofi Afari Dodi. We'll leave more of the introduction for him to do. But if you are here today, it is good that you are here. We want to go a little bit into details about the book that he has just published, which is Little Drops of Water. Little Drops of Water. And so, without taking any more of your time, Mr. Kofi Dodi, you are welcome.
Mr. Dodi will be fine.
Yeah, you're welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we want to start off and get a little overview of, give us a little bit of your background, tell us a little bit of who you are, and then after that we'll proceed to the next one.
Okay. I have a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's in business administration. Fortunately for me, I would say, I have some practical experience. I run my own personal financial advisory firm and portfolio management firm for 20 years. I've been fortunate in the industry, which is the financial services industry, in that my experience has spanned the whole spectrum of custody services, securities lending, portfolio management, and insurance. So this is the experience or the background that I come in with.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. That sounds like a lot of years of experience there. And so no wonder that you came up with this book. So we want to, go straight into the book, and we want to get, the listeners a brief overview, of the book, essentially, and what to expect in this book, the Little Drops of Water. Yeah.
Little drops of water. That is to show that in this book, we are not looking at a get-rich-quick scheme.
Okay.
What we're looking at is creating wealth takes time. Therefore, in this book, what you find is that we are talking about, first of all, working, because you cannot create wealth if you don't have an income. That's the first thing. Secondly, that when you have an income, you save. And when you save in the right places. And thirdly, you have a goal. So you plan for something specific down the line, meaning that we're looking at long-term way of thinking, not short-term.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dodi. And I myself have read the book, and after reading the book, I couldn't believe how simple finances can be. Mm-hmm. And in the book, from my experience, it made things very simple. And so, how is it that something which has been almost for a long time, the perception has been when it comes to finances, you have to go to a special school for it, and somehow you have, in this book, have broke it down right from the very beginning. You can read about perhaps a few pages, and after that you can feel that with those few pages you've read, you can make a dramatic change in your finances. And so, how were you able to come up with simplifying something that has been thought to be very complicated?
Thanks very much for that question. Because one of the things that I had been hoping for is that anybody who reads this book will begin to find out that learning or taking hold of your finances is simple. It's not complicated at all. And I'm glad you mentioned that when you read it, it came out as very simple. It is simple, but I also like to emphasize that it is not easy because we have so many distractions.
Yeah.
So for me, since I've been in the financial services business for over 40 years, and as I said earlier, I've had the experience within the whole spectrum from, you name it, custodial services, compliance, and all of those things. What my experience was that things are not that complicated, and the way you make money hasn't changed in centuries. It's the same way. So hopefully when you read this book, what you find is that if you have a job, and that's very important because without a source of income, you cannot create wealth. So if you have a job and you save in the right places, and you don't buy things just because you have the money, that's very simple. It means that you will be able to create the wealth that you want for the future.
For the future. So from what I'm hearing, it appears that even if for some reason this book is not only for people who currently have a job, and so if somebody don't have a job per se and they get a hold of this book, this would help that person, that individual, to know how to manage that income once they begin to accumulate that income. Because you mentioned that the first thing is having an income. An income.
Yes.
And so for somebody who doesn't have a job, there is no income. There is no income for that person. So it appears that this book is also for people who may, for one or two reasons, not have a job at the moment. And once they get that, that is supposed to help them carry them forward. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, again, as you mentioned, this book may be for others who do not have jobs, but I'm hoping the book also becomes motivational.
Okay.
Because as I already said, you have to have an income. So if someone who doesn't have a job at this point or doesn't have an income gets hold of this book, hopefully it will motivate them to go out there and look for a job. There is a section in the book that talks about what a good job is. Okay. And hopefully they will read it and become to realize, oh my goodness, if I want to create wealth, I need to get a job. And I need to do whatever it takes to get that job. So there is a motivational aspect of to this book, and also mainly it's advisory. Yes.
Yeah. So the core. So what would you say is the central idea or core behind, or the message you want to convey with this book?
The message is for young people that planning for your retirement is now.
Okay.
You don't wait and say, well, I'm only 20-something years old, therefore I don't need to think about retirement. So you think about that. That brings in the other aspect of what this book is trying to say is long-term planning. And then the third thing is what the book is trying to get young people to see is that you, as an individual, when you get a job, you have to manage your expenses. So that's very, very important. So that's the core of the book, is for you to plan for a comfortable retirement. If you're 20-something, what happens is that you're thinking, oh, I have 40 years to go. Well, 40 years can come like that. And therefore, it's so important that you are aware of that fact that, yes, 40 years may seem so far away, but if you wait 40 years from now, then you are too late. In other words, it's best to start now.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, in your book, you mentioned that besides your life, what do you consider to be the most valuable, to be your most valuable asset? And I want you to discuss a little bit about the answer you gave us, because you again, you made it very simple in the book when you asked the question and you give us the answer as well. And so what went into this simple answer you give? Even though it's simple, there's some there's wisdom in that. There's a lot of wisdom in that. So why would you ask that question? Why would you ask that question?
See, first of all, anytime you ask people, what is your most valuable asset? The first thing that comes into their mind is if they have a house.
Yeah.
They say it's my house. And for young people, usually if they have a car, it's their car. Okay. So those are the two things they think of.
Yeah.
What they forget is, how did you buy that house? How did you buy that car? The way you bought that car is you generated income to be able to buy that house. You generated income to be able to buy that car. So for you to generate income, you have to work. And therefore, your most valuable asset is your ability to generate income.
To generate, yeah.
Because without that, you can't have that house, you can't have that car.
Yeah. So I mean, what you're saying is absolutely true. But for somebody who has a job now and they have a fixed income, and so with a fixed income, let's say I'm making $2,000 a month. It's a fixed income. Now, things are not going so well for me with the $2,000 that I'm making. In terms of it appears that the $2,000 is not enough for me in a month. So where do I start from with that? Does that mean I get a better job in order to have a better living?
That's very, very, very interesting. But you see, the way that wealthy people think is they know they have a finite amount of money.
Okay.
Meaning, I wouldn't entirely agree with the way you characterize that it's a fixed income.
Okay.
Because when you are working, sometimes you get overtime. So your paycheck changes.
Okay.
So it's really not fixed. But for the sake of argument, let's say that you get a paycheck, $2,000 every month. That's what you have. What you do is you live within your means. So when you say it's not enough, my first question, why isn't it enough? That would be my first question.
That's the first question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not enough because we overspend.
Okay, so at this point now we're looking at income and expenses. So now we're going into the expenses part of it. Now, my rent is $1,500 out of the $2,000. Then I have to consider transportation, groceries, then I'm looking at my personal care, I'm looking at entertainment and, all these other things. So at the end of the month, I'm looking around 2,500. So,
Okay.
so my rent is 1,500. So how in a situation like that, does that mean I get an additional job? Is that what that means?
Well, first of all, why is your rent 1,500? Is that something that you can afford? Okay. So if you have a monthly income of 2,000 and you're spending 75% of that income, 75% on rent, then there is a problem. So you have to look at all those things. Yes, for a young person, it may be nice to have your own apartment by yourself and all of that. That's probably why you're paying 1,500. What is wrong with getting a roommate and splitting that 1,500? There's nothing wrong with that. Because if you got a roommate and that roommate is paying half of that 1,500, all of a sudden you're only using perhaps 30%, 25 to 30% of your income in rent. And therefore, guess what? You don't have a problem. The other thing is, a lot of times, young people, what they do, their discretionary expenses is so high. Discretionary meaning they go out, they see something, maybe it's a camera. They don't really need the camera, but they want it. So you go out and you buy it. Well, guess what? You spent money that you've earned that you could have saved for the future, for something that would help you down the line. Because guess what? When you save, what do you do? That savings earns a return for you. And when you've spent more than you make, what happens is that you borrow. And in our society here in America, it's very easy to borrow. You just pull out your credit card and guess what? Me as the bank, I'm so willing to give you that money because I'm going to charge you 20 to 30% interest. So now, if you borrowed $500, guess what? At 30% interest rate, now you owe that $300 plus the interest. Okay. And so you dig yourself further into
the. Now you mentioned that I used 1,500 as my income. I mean for the rent, how much I'm paying for the rent, and you mentioned 75% of it. The question is there a certain percentage that I should fall in to make it reasonable for me? And are you also saying that you wouldn't recommend I get a second job? And what is wrong with getting a second job?
Okay. First of all, there is no percentage of income that financial advisors agree on as to what you use to pay for your rent. But from my experience with my 20 years of experience in being a personal financial advisor and portfolio manager, what I've come to realize is that it's best to use anywhere from 25 to 30% of your income. So that's the first part. Because 25 to 30%, but as much as possible, you want to dial the button down to the lowest as much as possible.
Okay.
I know sometimes, depending on where you want to live, you have to pay extra and all of those things.
Yeah.
So, but again, just to answer that first part of the question, I recommend 25 to 30%.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the second part, there's nothing wrong with getting a second job. And in fact, you should. Okay, you should get a second job to increase your income if you have the time, if you can get the second job. But wouldn't it be better to look at overtime first if wherever you're working, they can give you overtime, I would rather do the overtime and get paid a time and a half, doing less, spending less amount of time
and making
more. You know, I know I say businesses, they would rather they don't pay the overtime because that's also a major expense for them.
Yeah.
But if they need you, then why not?
Now, my other question is that so far in the conversation we've talked about, it appears it's we're dealing with individuals, a young man, a young woman, maybe perhaps in college trying to make a decision. Does these things that we are talking about today, does it apply also to businesses? And I mean big businesses or even small businesses. Does these things we're talking about, income and expenses, does it apply to them as well?
Oh, of course. Businesses always look at their expenditure. Businesses always want to maximize their expenses. So if they can generate $10 with $1, that's what they're going to try to do. But I'd like us to shift the focus on the individuals because this is wealth creation for individuals. For individuals. But it's good that you asked that question because you, as the individual, you have to understand the decisions that the company or your employer makes. Mm-hmm. Also, believe me, has an angle whereby they are also trying to make sure that they don't overspend.
Yeah.
And that is also why sometimes it's difficult to get the overtime.
Yeah. Okay. This is good information. And so these things we are talking about, we can find it in this book. Is that correct? You have given us an outline how this individual can earn that income and how they can watch out for their expenses. Is this something we will find in a little drops of water?
Yes. It is all in there. What we try to do is to look at certain basic aspects of wealth creation.
Okay.
Which is income.
Okay.
Which is savings.
Okay.
Which is expenses. And then when you go even further, it looks at the what ifs in life.
Yeah.
Because life is not, something, it's not a walk in the park, if you may.
Yeah.
Or a stroll on the beach, as some people would put it.
Would put it.
Yeah.
So for me, let's say I used an example as, let's say I'm making that $2,000. From what I've heard you say is that with the $2,000, my rent is 75% already. Mm-hmm. This is already a no-no.
You are in a boxed corner
already, right from the beginning. And so the extra money that if my expenses is $2,500 at the end of the month and my income is $2,000, that means that $500.
You owe $500.
I owe $500
because you didn't have that $500. So now, how did you get that $500?
Yeah, I had to borrow.
You had to borrow from someplace.
I had to borrow, and of course, I owe some money at this point with that kind of lifestyle. For an example, as we speak. So here is where, let's say, this individual is. So where do we start? Where do I start as an individual
who
owes money, and how do I come to where do I sit when I sit behind my desk? What should go on the paper that I have pulled? What should go in there? If you give us, and I know all these answers are in your book, but I don't want you to give us all of it because we want you to purchase the book and read the book for yourself and get all the answers in it. But we want Mr. Adodi to give us just a gist of what that individual should begin to do in order to get themselves out of that debt they find themselves in?
So, first of all, you know you owe money.
Yeah.
And if you borrowed, you have to pay it back.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. You have to pay it back. So, as we already discussed, you have to find a way to make that extra money that you can make to pay back that debt.
Okay.
Secondly, you need to look at your expenses and reduce your expenses. It's very, very important, because if you've created an expense that now you owe 500 and you don't reduce your expenses, next month it will be 600. The following, you keep adding on it and you dig yourself further into a hole. So the best thing is, one, to sit down, have a plan on how you're going to pay off that debt.
That debt.
One of the things that you may want to do is, as we already mentioned, do extra time, overtime, and make some more money. And this time, as you make that money, don't spend it on something else, but use it to pay down your debt.
Yeah. So we have to be disciplined at this point.
Very disciplined.
Now that you find yourself in that position where you owe some kind of money, you have to discipline yourself in your expenses, and also try to increase your income as much as you can, whether through doing overtime, which you have mentioned would be one of the more easier, for lack of better words, easier route, rather than getting a whole nother job. Now,
you can still get another job.
Yeah, I can get another job. Is it just to help me pay for my debt?
Well, very good question, Isaac. Very, very good question. You see, when you get a second job, again, we mentioned you have to plan things. So you get a second job. Yes, you want to get rid of that debt. But remember, that second job, the income coming in, some of it also has to be saved. So the problem or the issue here is, as a human being, you have to have time to play.
Yeah.
So if you're doing 2 jobs, 3 jobs, when do you ever get the time to rest or to even socialize? So your goal is not to create debt for yourself and then do 2-3 jobs or a lot of overtime to pay down the debt. No. What you want to do is, now that you're in debt, plan, get a job, do something, and get rid of that debt. And if at the end of it all, you can still do the second job, why not? Do it and still socialize, still do the things that you want to do. You continue to do it and save. But at some point, you want one job so that you can focus fully on that job and excel in it, so that your employer will see how well you excel, and guess what? Get promotions.
Yeah. That's very important. And so let's come to a different side of it. I'm a gentleman. I'm a young lady. I'm getting out of college. Let's say for 1 or 2 reasons, I got myself into this debt. I've listened to your advice. Perhaps I did some overtime, or perhaps my job doesn't permit me to do as much overtime as I would want to. And so I decided to instead get a second job to pay my debt. I was able to get a second job, and now my debt, I've paid off my debt. So now I decide to come back to just that one job. Now, I've listened to your advice of perhaps either getting a roommate, so that my rent, which is 75%, now reduces significantly, at least less than 50%. So now I have some kind of money coming in. Now I want you to help that individual, or tell that individual now how do I, save some of that money? How do I save some of that money? What would you suggest that I do? Because as much as I'm trying to be disciplined in my finances, I have one checking account and one savings account. These days they've made it easier for us to transfer money from your savings or your checkings to your savings and your savings to your checkings. And so the temptation is there. Even when the money is in my savings, I can log in and quickly transfer money and it goes instantly into my checking account. So what would you suggest that I do now that I've been able to get rid of my debt, following your advice, and now I'm at a point where I want to be financially free and independent? And what would you say for such a person to do in order to save the money that they are making?
Okay, so again, I want to emphasize savings.
Okay.
And when you read the book, you'll find that there are different categories of savings. One of the main ones that I always talk about is your retirement savings. So now that you are at that point, open another account. In an account that you don't have easy access. So it doesn't have to be with your local bank. But when you read the book, it will tell you specifically where or how these accounts or how they're operated. So you have to invest in or save in different buckets. And those buckets are explained in the book.
Okay.
So when you go in there, and it will tell you exactly which buckets you need to go into. And then,
for certain things.
Yes. So you save in those buckets, and you won't have to worry about these transfers. But the question I want to ask is, why the transfers? If you are following the plan and your discretionary expenses are tamed, then you won't be transferring monies for anything, because you have a budget as to what you're going to spend your money on. Initially you said if you put your paper down, and then that's a budget. You write down what your income is and what your expenses are. Or what you expect your expenses to be. Of course, your rent, you know how much it is. So if you have reduced that, and now you have the money to pay down the loan, after the loan is paid, what do you do with that money that now is still coming in and is not going towards the loan? You save that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question now then is the savings, saving for what? Because
good question.
Somebody will say, I'm living today. I'm living here now. I don't have any children. It's just me. Save for what exactly? Okay. So can we talk a little bit about perhaps what is that savings supposed to be meant for? And perhaps also, as we are on the savings, let's talk about how much should I save? How much should I save? Yeah.
Okay. You're living for the moment. And then when you don't have money, you go to your friend and say, can I borrow $20? What makes you think your friend is a bank? And what makes you think, as for your friend, is not living for the moment?
For the moment.
See, so if you recall, I mentioned something about the what ifs in life.
Yeah.
So if you save, okay, and you don't spend the money just because, quote, I'm living for today. Well, when you save, you're still living for today, but you're also thinking about tomorrow. Anything can happen. We already mentioned the fact that life is not, a stroll in the park.
Yeah.
So The advice is don't think short term, think long term. You're saving the money for your future, because as you put the monies away, one, if it's in a regular savings account, it still makes a return, and a return meaning you make a profit. But of course, savings accounts, as we all know today, the interest on it is like 0.01%. It's not much. So you have to find other ways by which you can make a little bit more. And that is all addressed in the book.
In the book.
Yes. But don't live for just today. You live for today and for tomorrow and for the next, because tomorrow becomes today, and that today, the next day becomes tomorrow. So it's so important, because how many cameras do you need? Probably need one. How many iPhones do you need? You need one. Why do you want to buy two? Why?
Or you get the because you want to get the latest version every year.
That's okay. If that's what you want to do, plan it, budget it. But what do you do with the old one? Do you gift it to someone? That's fine too. That's somebody's Christmas present. There's no problem. There's no worries there. That's just that you have to be able to manage your expenses, and especially your discretionary expenses. And discretionary expenses are expenses that you don't need to make.
Yeah, thank you. And so the savings is meant for certain things in your own future. And in this case, not just the individual. Let's say you are married and you and your spouse, you guys are saving it for rainy days. And so as far as savings in your book, does it talk about what you can potentially use some of these savings for? Does it talk about that? And for let's say again, going back to an individual or even couples, what are some of, do you recommend a percentage they should send to their savings, or a dollar amount, or is it just something that because this is an individual who is trying to learn how to be disciplined. And so what are some of the suggestions you would suggest for that individual as far as savings percentage wise or amount wise? What would you recommend?
Okay, that's a very good question. And let me tell you a story. During my time as the personal financial advisor and portfolio manager, I had young clients who were mainly the children of my clients. Because most of my clients decided that they wanted their children to do things differently from the way they did their things, and they wanted their children to have a better financial outlook than they did. So they will bring their children in as clients. And one of the things that I noticed is that as soon as you talk to them about savings, and they buy into the concept and they understand, oh, wow, that's not a bad idea. And then you ask them, how much do you think you can save on a monthly basis? And usually I say per paycheck, because I want them to save a certain percentage or a certain amount from their paycheck, because that's when that money is coming in. Not waiting till the end of the month. And what I noticed is that out of enthusiasm, someone would say, oh, I can save $300 a month, or I can save $300 per paycheck. And then they would do that 2, 3, 4 months. And then the next thing you find out, they went back and took $600 out of that savings account. So when we have our quarterly meetings, they are required to bring their savings account statement. Then I will go, what happened here? You said you could do 3. Well, I needed the money. What did you need the money for? And then they talk about
so many things.
Yeah, it's all discretionary expenses. So, based on that experience, I don't recommend a specific percentage.
Okay.
I always say, do your budget and include savings as an expense. So if it's $100, put down $100 and commit to it. You commit to it and don't go back to take that money. Because guess what? In your expenses, after you spend your money for your rent, you can't go back to your landlord and collect it.
Yeah.
So then if you see it as an expense and you commit to it, in a year, you see that you have $1,200.
Yeah.
And that $1,200, you can invest that in something else. So I always say the savings becomes a platform for your future investments.
So some of the things that you can invest in the future, as you mentioned, in your book, as I was reading it, I saw education as one of them. Education is one of them, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And you also mentioned in your book, some of the few things. I realized that you didn't focus, because a lot of the mindset for many people that I've experienced is that you have a better life when you have certain careers. So when you are a doctor, because they get more money, when you're an athlete, football player, you make more money. A basketball player, a registered nurse, those are really what people in the society that I've experienced will consider as good jobs. And so it even a lot of the young people want to go into that field because there's money there. But in your book, you mentioned even plumbers and masons, and machinists, and that you as an individual can invest some of your savings into getting training on whatever line you find yourself in. So I want you to just talk a little bit about that. I know we have it in your book, but I want you to, for people who are out there who are listening and maybe plumbers or in the vocational side, on the vocational side of things, how can they better themselves with that savings that they've been able to discipline themselves to raise?
Okay, so I want to talk about savings, putting money away from the income that you make.
Yeah.
We also talk about investments in the book. One of the investments that I try to emphasize in the book is investing in yourself. And that is extremely important. What that means is that you have to allocate some of those savings that you've put away to further your education, to receive the training that you need in your vocation, to go back to school if you need a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. So that's one way, one of the things that we talk about in the book, investing in yourself. Having said that, on the vocation side, yes, in a lot of the immigrant communities, everybody wants their child to be a doctor, to be a nurse,
Yeah.
The so-called high visibility professions. What we forget is that if you are home and your plumbing isn't working, You don't need a doctor. You need a plumber. So you can't look down on that vocation. As a matter of fact, without plumbers, the house you live in, how are you going to get your water system in place? So that can be a vocation. And therefore, even though within the community, the focus is those high visibility jobs, you as an individual, you don't have to think that way. You know, I know of somebody who was always afraid of blood, but the family always said she was going to be a doctor.
A doctor.
Well, how is she going to be a doctor if she's afraid of blood? Oh, not just she's going to be a surgeon. So if you are the patient on that operating table and this person has been pushed in that direction, what do you think would happen? Most likely they wouldn't even get to that stage.
That stage, yeah.
You know,
the passion is not there.
All we're saying is being successful is not about how much money you make. It's what you do with the money that you make, how you manage it. And success is defined differently by every financial success is defined differently by everybody.
Yeah.
In my book, I'm hoping that people will see that it's all about a comfortable retirement. What do I mean by that? I'm retired and I'm comfortable. You know, just 2 months ago, my wife and I were in Greece. We went to Greece, not because we've never been there before, but my wife said, oh, you remember 8 years ago when we went to Greece, there were certain places we couldn't go.
Couldn't
so
go.
Let's go.
Let's go finish that one.
And we did. The point is that a comfortable retirement is very, very important.
Yeah.
You know, because when you get to my age and you don't work anymore as a retiree, there's no income coming in. You get to my age and there's no income coming in. Guess what? You don't have to worry about being kicked out of your house because you can't pay your rent, because your social security isn't enough. Okay. And believe me, I know, because I'm a retiree, social security is not enough. Okay. And so you have to think long term and invest in yourself, and not just look at, I have to be a nurse, I have to be a doctor. No, those are great jobs. But guess what? Dog catcher is a great job.
Yeah.
Because if you have a dog bothering you and there's no dog catcher, what are you going to do? Are you going to go out and try to catch that dog yourself?
Yeah.
So the whole point is we don't look down on any job. Don't.
Yeah.
Because perhaps that's where your success may be in.
I have another question about that. With your what I'm hearing so far, and thank you very much for all this information. I know there's even more in this book, and as I mentioned earlier, this book has been simplified for everyone, and the first 3 pages, 2 pages, 5 pages, you read and you feel fulfilled, and you want to make some changes in your life. Now, it appears that from what I've heard you say and what I've also read in the book, it appears that it's not so much about only so much about how much you are making.
No.
It appears that it's about disciplines and commitments. Mm-hmm. And so is that what you are trying to do? Is that you are trying to help people, whether you have a high-paying job or not so high-paying job, but how to use wisdom and principles to manage that money that you have for today and also for tomorrow. Is that what I'm seeing in this book?
Well, in the book, I give an example of two individuals. And, you know, when you read it, you'll find that one of them was in a very high-paying job, making 10 times more than the one in the low-paying job. But then, as we've already said, the economy or life is not always smooth. Well, the economy changed. And both people live in the same economy, so guess what? They both lost their jobs. Somebody will say, well, the guy who was making over $500,000 will be fine. But if you read my book, you find in that example, he was in the worst situation.
You're talking about Tom.
That's right.
And the other guy was Jerry. Interesting. Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry. You know, and and that example is real. It is real. What do I mean by it's real? These were my clients.
Interesting.
It's real. You know, and so it is so important to be disciplined and be committed to what you're doing. You know, when you see your friend go out there and change their car to a BMW, don't go and do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it is nice that they can afford a BMW. All the power to them. Maybe you can't afford it based on your long-term goals. You know,
Yeah.
so it's extremely important that we are disciplined. And if you're disciplined and you're committed, guess what? It's easier.
It's easier.
It's much easier. You can, you know, when I was in business as a personal financial advisor, all my young people, our goal was to get them to, by age 45, their net worth will be $500,000.
Oh, wow.
And in the beginning, when I said that, some of them looked at Mr. Dodi.
That's quite.
How am I going to get $500,000? You know, I'm, 25 years old. 20 years from now, you say. But then when you sit down and you begin to calculate how much of their savings is going into their 401ks, how much of it is going into their regular savings, how much of it is going into their cash reserve, and being very careful not to owe anybody anything, then they begin to see that, oh my goodness, I'm actually saving almost $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
And this $30,000 a year, most of it, you're not paying taxes on it because it's going into your retirement account.
Okay. I want us to switch to a different gear.
Okay.
And this is a little bit more towards the religious side.
Mm-hmm.
We've had situations where, and I know this book, as you mentioned, the audience, it's pretty much for everybody. And so this is a very specific question. Should I pay my tithes to my church? And if I do, should it be paid on my gross or net?
Okay. And as I have said in the book, I got a lot of questions. And this particular question is faith-based. So first of all, I want to say the book is not intended to be a book about religion. However, as a personal financial advisor, this is a financial question that a legitimate question that a client would ask. And in fact, I was asked that question. For the purposes of the book, income is defined as your paycheck, what you receive. That's what your income is. And what I know from the Bible is that you pay your tithes on your income. So, for the purposes of this, we are not talking about gross income, net income. We are talking about income. So, yes, you should pay tithes to your church because that is part of the tenets of the church and that is part of your belief. So, you pay. Now, do you pay it on net income or gross income? Again, I come back to, for the purposes of this book, income is your paycheck, what your take-home pay. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And in some way, because, you mentioned that what you receive. And so most of the questions has always surrounded that you received your income fully as gross. And then after that, there are deductions. And so that's where most of the conversations have been, is that just as the government takes its taxes on the gross, that the tithe should also come from the gross. But in this case, from what you are explaining to us now, is that for the purposes, again, as you emphasize, for the purposes of this book, is that it's what you received in your hand, in your account or your bank account or things like that. And so is that what you are
what
meaning?
I'm saying is income. Income is what you get in your hand.
In your hand.
And when you do a budget, you don't do your budget based on your gross. Okay? You don't. See, maybe your employer said, okay, I'll give you this job and I'll pay you $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Well, you don't do your budget based on that 100,000. You do your budget based on what you receive as a paycheck. Secondly, yes, you may even be given a gross salary of 100,000, but then there are other benefits that are also within there, which a lot of times people don't even realize. Maybe your company is paying, helping or subsidizing your medical insurance. So then are you saying that all of that, since you are subsidizing, then you're saying that's all part of income. So your total income is not going to be just 100,000. It's going to be that 100 plus other payments. Yeah. So are you saying that then, I should pay my tithes on all of that? Most people don't even know what that amount is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In this book, again, this is an financial advisory book. We're trying to make things easy and simple. So, again, for an financial advisory and wealth creation, what comes to you as income is your paycheck.
It's your paycheck.
Yeah. So my position is, yes, you should pay tithes to your, but at the end of the day, it's up to you how you want to pay the tithes. The important thing is you are committed.
You're committed to it. And that's what, so this commitment, and we're bringing this interview to an end here very soon. This commitment, everything that we've talked about, when do I start implementing this?
Now. Right now. Commitment is not something that you postpone and say tomorrow I will start. You have to decide that you are committed and start now. So if your next paycheck is coming next week, decide that maybe I'll send $100 to my savings account. And please do that consistently and see how that comes out.
Yeah. So the time is now.
Now.
It's not later. You have to, if you have to go and buy a book, start writing down what your income is, what your expenses are. The time is now. Now we want to wrap things up with Mr. Kofi Afari Dodi. Mr. Kofi Afari Dodi. And so I want to ask you just some few questions here, that for those who may already know you, or those who may also not know you yet, what's something that people might be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I am married.
All right.
To the same woman for 42 years now.
Wow.
And we have adult children.
Okay.
I'm not even sure how to put it, but I tend to be very principled, and that is not always how some people react to you in a different way. But for me, what I know is there are certain core values that you stick to, and you don't go against those core values.
Those values.
No. One of them is being focused. Another is ensuring that your yea is yea and your nay is nay. And if you have something to say, you should say it. But there's always a good way to say it. Use wisdom.
Yeah.
Because not everybody is going to agree with you, and you are not going to be agreeing with everybody. But if you keep your mouth shut, then you're condoning certain things that perhaps is not going to be helpful.
So is these principles that you talked about, is that what influenced you to write this book? And is that part of the reason, or I guess for lack of better words, what influenced you at this point in your life to write this book, or to write a book with a lot of wisdom like this one?
As I said right from the beginning, I've been in the financial services business over 40 years. In fact, since 1980, when I graduated as an undergraduate from college. And then also the last 20 years, I ran my own advisory and portfolio management practice. I had a franchise with Ameriprise Financial Services for 20 years. Excuse me. After I retired, I like to use plumbers as an example. Once a plumber, always a plumber.
Always a plumber.
So yes, I was retired, yet my relationship with my former clients was not just they were clients. Some of them had become friends. So even though I was retired, sometimes I'll get a phone call, someone will have a question, and then my family members will call me and ask questions because they got their statements and this and all of that. And so, yes, I was retired, but I was still, quote, working. So I had to, of course, keep up with the market and the economic environment. So what I decided to do, and I have to say, upon the urging of some of my former clients, is you have all this knowledge. Why don't you put it in a book? So at one point, I decided that, okay, as a way to transfer knowledge, let me put it in a book. So that's what brought about the writing of the book.
Of this book. If you could recommend one book other than your own book, what would it be?
Well,
and why? If you have that answer to that one.
Now, I'm assuming you're asking one book that is also in the financial. Okay, I will recommend The Richest Man in Babylon by George Gleason.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that book is very simple, very, very simple. And when you read it, you see that the way to create wealth hasn't changed in millions of years.
Yes.
It's not complicated, but it's not easy. It's simple. It requires commitment. It requires having an open mind. It requires going to the people that knows what you're doing. And I say that in my book as well. Those are the people who will encourage you. So yes, The Richest Man in Babylon.
The Richest Man in Babylon. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And so all this that we have discussed today, is it that we will find most of the answers to some of the questions that we asked, and also the ones that we couldn't ask in this book? Where can we find this book? Let's say, I come across your video on YouTube, and I'm listening to this conversation. Where can I find this book to purchase?
Okay, it's being sold on all the online book retail stores, Amazon. It's there. If you go to even Google and you put in little drops of water and you put my name, Kofi Dodi, it will pop up.
It will pop up.
It's out there. It's and if you mentioned questions also. The book also has a questions and answer section. These are questions, most of which I got from my young clients.
Yeah.
And some of them from my own children.
Yeah.
I may be the one whose name is on this book as I wrote it, but I needed the help of my daughters and son to be able to communicate what I know in the language that young people understand. So I give them a lot of credit for that. There is also a section in the book where, even though in the beginning I said that the book is really geared towards 20-something and up, someone who has just graduated from school, be it high school or college. And is in the job market or may be working. This is a good book, a starter for them to take a look at. But then there's a section also that talks about the retirement distributions. So that is also good for people in age 50 and up who are still in the job market, because if you are 50 years old, it is not too late. If you are 55 years old, you still have at least 10 years to go to accumulate some wealth for your retirement. Because at the end of the day, Social Security, you cannot rely on it. It's not the only thing that you should be looking at for your retirement.
Yeah, so what we will do is that we will share the link to the book in the comment section. We'll put all the information on the screen as you're watching this video, so that it will be easier for you to connect with Mr. Dodi here as well. And make sure you check out his channel as well. And so his channel, if you go to YouTube and you just type in Kofi Afari Dodi, Kofi is Kofi, and then Afari is Afari, and then Dodi is Dodi. If you type that in, if you want to hear this again, just repeat the video. You will hear the spellings again, and then you'll be able to find him on there. And then on that platform, you can ask him questions. We'll put also his email on the screen for you. If you have any questions, I'm sure a lot of you would want us to have this conversation again, and most likely answering some of the questions that you have. And I know for couples, questions will pop up, with regards to savings and investments and all those things. So I know you have a lot of questions, and so you can answer it through, or you can ask that question through his platform. But I'll also open it for Mr. Dodi here to tell us if there's any other way that we can get a hold of him if we have any questions.
I think what you've mentioned, again, on the YouTube channel, if you have a question, just put it out there. We will answer the question. Sometimes, and I say this quite a bit, people have questions and they think it's not a good question. Well, the questions that are not asked, those are the bad questions. So ask your question, because sometimes the question you are asking is not really for your benefit as only. It's for somebody else's benefit. Yeah. So ask. Also, you can send your questions through the email, and every question that comes in will be answered. So please, send your questions. Ask your friends, even if they have questions. If their friend has read it and they want to ask the same question from a different perspective, that's fine, because it's not one answer doesn't fit all.
It doesn't fit all.
As a financial advisor, what I did was my clients' portfolios was not generic. It was custom made to the individual's situation. The same way your questions, your answers will be geared or tailored to fit your particular situation.
Yeah. Is there something that you want, like to share that maybe we didn't cover just yet, and kind of give us your final summary on the discussions that we've had today? If there's something specific that we didn't talk about.
At this point, I don't know. The only thing I would say is that read the book, and as you read it, there are activity sections in there. Please take the time to do the activities. And then there are advice in there. Please read the advice carefully. Go back and read it. And if anything catches your mind and you're not sure about it, write it down and just ask your question raw, the way the way it comes to you.
It comes to you.
Yeah. And we will be very happy to respond right away.
So our last question is, what's next for you? Are we going to expect more books? What is next for you? You mentioned you are in retirement at the moment, and so the whole part of this, the reason for the book is to help people when they get to your age, they can be comfortable. They can be comfortable, and so I believe, as you mentioned earlier, you are comfortable.
I am.
But is there anything next for you? Is it that you have more travels to Greece?
Yeah, actually, there are more travels in the works. At this point, whatever my wife says, that's what we'll do. So we are looking at that. That's one. But also, having that opportunity to write the book, now I'm realizing that writing the book itself was therapeutic. So now there are things that have come into my mind that I've already started putting together.
Oh yeah, that's good.
A book. And as we all know, in our economy, laws changes. So I'm also now thinking of certain updates that can come up. So right now, if you have questions, and if there are any changes in the law the next 3, 4, 5 years, we will update all of that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Kofi Afari Dodi.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and it was a pleasure talking to you. As I stated earlier, I myself have read this book, and what I can say is, or even to our viewers, is let's develop the passion to read. Let's develop the passion to read. And then also let's also develop the passion to apply the advice we get from these books that we are reading, especially Little Drops of Water. And once you apply it, you would see a significant improvement in your life and also in your finances as well. So we want to thank you for coming this evening and having a conversation with us. And I know this is not the end of it. We'll have you here again to continue our discussion. And so, is there any final words you have for us before we bring this to an end?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate that. Like I said, this is my first podcast, and I hope this is not going to be the last.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not.
So thank you. I appreciate that very much.
No problem. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you again in the near future.
Amen. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right.